Hi everyone, hope you're all doing great. Thank you for your valuable support. If you've been here a few times and haven't subscribed, I would invite you to subscribe and be a part of this growing community. We are now going to discuss in detail about active and passive voice and also share some great tips to help you understand this lesson easily. Let's get into the video. A majority of our communication happens in the active voice because it's clear, direct, and easy to understand. Active voice is when the subject performs an action. The subject is very important and typically appears at the beginning of a sentence. Here is an example. John painted the wall. Here, John is a subject. There is just one main verb here, which is painted, and the object is a wall. One thing to note here is that this sentence is in the past tense because the verb painted is in the past tense. In the passive voice, the object is being acted upon. The object is given more prominence and appears at the beginning of the sentence. The subject may or may not be a part of the sentence depending upon its relevance. Before we look at converting the above sentence into the passive voice, let's learn about auxiliary verbs. Auxiliary verbs play a very important part in forming the passive voice. They are known as helping verbs because they support the main verb in a sentence. It is typical to see them before the main verb in a sentence. Let's take a look at the auxiliary verbs. The auxiliary verbs can be categorized into be, do, and have. The be verbs are am, are, is, was, were, be, been, being. Have consists of have, has, had, and having. Under do, we have do, does, and did. Now, I want you to pay extra attention to what I'm going to say next. When forming the passive voice, here are a few things to know. We need an auxiliary verb. We need to change the main form of the verb into the past participle. If the verb is take or took, the past participle form would be taken. Lastly, we would use the preposition by followed by the doer's name, or if it's a pronoun, we would use the object pronouns such as me, him, her, them, and us. In our example, it would be by John. If we convert the sentence John painted the wall, which is in the active, to the passive voice, it would read as the wall was painted by John. We use the auxiliary verb was to indicate that this was an action that happened in the past and corresponds to the past participle form painted. The object or the wall becomes the subject here. John, who was a subject in the active voice, becomes the object in the passive voice. Let's look at some of the sentences in different tenses and see how we can convert them into the passive voice. She bakes cakes. Now this is a sentence in the present tense because the verb says bakes. The subject here is a pronoun she who is performing an action. Bakes is the main verb. The object is cakes. Note that this sentence has just one main verb. When we convert this into the passive voice, the sentence becomes cakes are baked by her. If you notice, instead of one verb, we now have two verbs. The object cakes appears at the beginning of the sentence. Since the active voice is in the present tense, the passive voice also has to be in the same tense. The auxiliary verb are is used since we are talking of not one but many cakes, and it also corresponds to the past participle form which is baked. Lastly, we need to add the preposition by followed by the object pronoun her. Let's take a look at a sentence in the present continuous. The chef is baking a cake. We have the subject, the chef. If you notice, there are two verbs here. The auxiliary verb is and the main verb baking. In the passive form, the sentence would look like this. A cake is being baked by the chef. In addition to the verb is, we need to add the auxiliary verb being, which is the present continuous form of the verb be. The main verb changes from baking to the past participle form baked. Next is the present perfect tense. The present perfect tense includes have and has. Here is an example of a sentence in the active voice. The company has implemented many policies. The subject here is a company. Note that we have two verbs here, the auxiliary verb has and the main verb implemented, which is in the past participle form. The object is many policies. Here is a sentence in the passive voice. Many policies have been implemented by the company. In order to form the perfect tense in the passive voice, we need to add the auxiliary verb been. In the active voice, we use the verb has since it corresponds to the company or one particular company. This sentence starts with many policies, and the corresponding verb that we would use would be have and not has. Let's look at a sentence in the active voice where the past perfect tense has been used. With the past perfect tense, we use had. They had completed the work before the meeting. The subject here is they. There are two verbs here, had and completed. The object is the work. When converting this into the passive form, we need to use the auxiliary verb been before the main verb. So the sentence in the passive voice would be, the work had been completed by them before the meeting. Now let's take a look at the future tense. To construct the future tense, we make use of the verb will. Here is an example. We will combine the ingredients together. In this sentence, the subject is the pronoun we. Will is a helping verb followed by the main verb combine. The object here is ingredients. Here is how this sentence will look like in the passive voice. The ingredients will be combined together. Here we added the auxiliary verb be before the main verb. The next is the future perfect tense will have. The future tense is represented by will and the perfect tense by have. Here is a sentence in the active voice using the future perfect tense will have. The board will have implemented the plan next week. The board is the subject here, the main verb is implemented, and the object is the plan. When the future tense is combined with the perfect tense, this is how it will look like in the passive voice. The plan will have been implemented next week, or the plan will have been implemented by the board next week. We use the auxiliary verb been to form the passive voice. Let's construct sentences in the active and passive voice using some of the model auxiliary verbs. The model auxiliary verbs are can, could, will, would, may, might, ought, must. Here is a sentence in the active voice with the model verb can. We can follow the instructions. Just like the future tense where we use the auxiliary verb be, we would also use the same here when forming the passive voice using the modal verbs. So this would be, the instructions can be followed. Now let's look at an example of a sentence using the modal verb must. The authorities must take initiatives. The subject here is the authorities. There are two verbs here, the modal verb must and the main verb take. The object here is initiatives. When we convert this into the passive voice, it would be initiatives must be taken by the authorities. The object initiatives becomes the subject. In addition to the two verbs must and taken, we add the auxiliary verb be to form the passive voice. I hope you found this lesson helpful, and if you did, kindly hit on the like button since it helps with the algorithm. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to make use of the comment section. I would also encourage you to watch all the other videos here on this channel. If you're looking for personalized classes to improve your communication skills, feel free to send me a message or use the comment box. Subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video on your social media so that others can also benefit. I will see you all soon with another video.